Joining us today to speak about this ballot measure, as you know, is Mayor Shane Bemis. Mayor Bemis is currently serving his second term as Gresham's mayor. He was first elected to the Gresham City Council in 2002, and for 3 years served as the council president. In 2005, Shane chaired the city's Centennial Celebration Committee and orchestrated Gresham's 100th birthday celebration. That same year, Shane was honored as Gresham's Citizen of the Year. 2006, Shane was elected to his first term as mayor at the age of 34, making him the youngest mayor to serve the city of Gresham. And in 2007, you probably noticed that he's aged significantly since then. In 2007, he was the recipient of the Portland Business Journal's 40 Under 40 honor. And in 2008, Shane was recognized by the Oregon Mayors Association for his leadership in Gresham. Today, Shane continues to be a restaurant owner in Gresham, as well as a husband and a father. And to speak on the issue of Gresham's public safety levy, would you please welcome our mayor, Shane Bemis.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today with you. And if you would just take the sheet here and go ahead and fill out excellent before we get started and turn them in. No need to hear what we have to say this morning. No, just kidding. Again, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think it is not inconsequential that the chamber, as Allison Hart had said, has taken a position on this measure. I think that speaks volumes of the business community. It speaks volumes of the work that the governmental affairs arm of the chamber has been able to do. 15 years ago, when I was chair of the governmental affairs, we tried very hard to get to a place where we endorsed measures and candidates, and we could never quite get there. So congratulations on getting there. I think it's incredibly important to the businesses that you represent to have a strong voice with the local government. So congratulations on that. So a lot of you in this room have seen most of this presentation before, so I'll try and keep it at sort of a higher level and then open it up for questions and answers, which I think is generally where we're most productive anyway. So for a refresher, many of you will remember the process we underwent in 2012 and in the time since then to engage the community around funding constraints that we face, largely as a result of unintended consequences and quirks caused by Oregon's property tax reforms of Measure 5 and 50. Among others, well, let me remember to do this. Okay, so here's a lot of the public outreach we did. Among other things, Measure 50 locked Gresham's permanent rate in at an exceptionally low amount, $3.61 per thousand of taxable assessed value. Now, you've heard me say before, we're pretty proud of our efficiencies in Gresham, and we don't plan on changing that, but to give you some idea of how dramatically low that rate is, we compiled the average household cost for general local government services in the 10 largest cities in Oregon. And that'll show you where Gresham is. Gresham, of course, is the fourth largest city, and as you can see on this slide, of course, we're at the bottom. Again, we are certainly proud of our thrifty service delivery, but it doesn't come without impacts to the community. As you can see on this slide, we have sustained some substantial layoffs over the past few years during a period in which same time Gresham's population has grown. So you can see 587 full-time equivalent employees in 2008 down to 519, and the population has grown. It's actually more than 107, but that's conservative. Now, if you compare our average general fund employees per thousand residents to the other large cities in Oregon, you can see again how lean our operation is. So we have 2.60 general fund employees per thousand residents. It's interesting to note that in our charter, as at the same time a lot of the property tax measures were being placed statewide, in the charter also was placed the full-time employee equivalent. So we can't hire over 6 employees per thousand. Now that was thought to be a very conservative, keep the growth of government limited and constrain it to 6 employees. So you can see we're doing really well with that. We're at 2.60. And it's also worth noting that there isn't much general about the general fund. As you can see here, around 90% of the general fund goes directly to police and fire. So again, we're talking about the very basic elements of local government services. And when it comes, obviously when it comes to the critical public safety departments, Gresham does a great job with the resources we have, but again, as you can see, we're incredibly lean. This slide shows every police department in Oregon that is included in the FBI's per capita statistics. If you adjust the temporary funded officer positions, Gresham is second from the last. So again, that's officers per 1,000 residents without the fee for every city in Oregon that the FBI statistically tracks. We're about the same over on fire and EMS side. This slide shows where Gresham is relative to every similar sized department in service areas across the country. Again, near the last. So, to put it very simply, we've reached a point where we can no longer go in the anemic funding environment without the community feeling really strong impacts to the local community. Again, after engaging the community in perhaps the most robust outreach effort we've ever had in Gresham, with multiple newsletters, town halls, city council meetings, forums with neighborhood groups and business groups, and personal letters in the mail, we started to arrive at some pretty basic themes. For one, nearly everyone we encountered acknowledged the importance of the services at hand and wanted to see them sustained. In order to accomplish this in the immediate short term, Council unanimously adopted a temporary 17-month police, fire, and parks fee, with 95% of the revenue going to police and fire and 5% going to parks. Now, the temporary fee provided around $5 million in revenue, and to give you some order of magnitude, the funding it provided to the police department represents roughly the equivalent cost of about 20 police positions. The revenue the temporary fee sent to the fire department is roughly equivalent to the cost of operating 2 of the city's fire stations. And the 5% that the fee sent to parks is around 1/3 of the park's maintenance staff. So as you know, the fee, I'm really behind on these slides, aren't I? Okay. So the fee is set to expire this coming June. We know that, of course, maintaining that these critical services is a high priority for the public. So we spent the interim period in between the fee and now trying to put together what we heard from the public in those original town hall meetings. Namely, we heard that people wanted to see the services maintained and wanted to avoid dramatic cuts. But people generally preferred to see a tool that would be voter approved, temporary in duration, would grow with the economy, and not be able to be raised whimsically. So we took all of those perspectives into consideration, and the best path forward to accomplish each of those elements turned out to be a 5-year levy in the amount of $1.25 per thousand of taxable assessed value. Again, 95% of the revenue going to police and fire, 5% going to parks. Notably, the council not only unanimously approved this levy for the ballot, but we set specific priorities for the funds, which included enforcement and prevention of gang activity, police and fire response times, keeping fire stations open, combating neighborhood crimes that impact livability and home values, and keeping parks open, clean, safe, and accessible for our residents. In addition, we learned that there are right ways and wrong ways to set up a proposed levy, and the right ways all include strong financial control mechanisms. As a result, the levy revenue from Measure 26-157 will be placed in a dedicated and protected fund, and the city's citizen-driven finance committee will have ultimate oversight over it. In closing, I would just say thank you again to the Chamber for taking the time to look at the issue thoroughly and understand and be able to communicate to your members what it means to the business community. I think we all have a lot to gain or lose in this election, particularly as it relates to our home values, our business values. We have all said before, we've all made investments in this room, in this community, and it's time to make some more investments. Every city in the region in the last 20 years has invested in their community except Gresham. Every single one has invested except Gresham. You can start to see that that has real consequences in our city. So It's time we step up. Nobody likes to replace the furnace, but there are times where you have to do it or you're not going to have any customers. And I really believe that this community, this city, is at a defining moment. I detest it when politicians say that we're at a defining moment because I think it's trite, but really I can't think of anything that clearly spells out where we are more than to say we really are at a defining moment. So I welcome your questions and your answers, and again, thank you for the time to be here today, and thank you for the work that much of you have already done to help with the levy. I appreciate your support and always your help. So thank you very much.
So as is our method, we'll go ahead and take questions from you all. What I'll do is that I'll pass the mic and ask that you go ahead and give us your name and your business because you're on tape. And we want to speak out loudly enough so that the video can catch those for future posterity, of course. And I'll start off the pitch here with a question. So, Mayor Bemis, right here. Aha, you thought I didn't have an answer. So, Mayor Bemis, how did we get into the fiscal situation that we right now have? Could you give us some background on that, please?
Yeah, so I want to be clear to say that even though we're in a funding crisis, everything for us stems from the incredibly low rate of $3.61 per thousand. That used to work 20 years ago. When we were a suburban community and we could live on our buttes and all the problems were everywhere else in the region. But as issues have steadily moved to the east and limited resources to handle those issues, you can see where we have fallen down. But I do want to be clear and make this point. Gresham is incredibly financially prudent. We are not in bankruptcy. We have not borrowed. We have not gotten to a point where we're carrying a ton of debt. We have a pretty low debt rate. So we're financially, structurally sound in that regard. But as it comes to funding the critical services, the problem again is that permanent low rate.
Could you just elaborate for me a little bit on this financial oversight group that you're going to have that's going to kind of be the watchdog?
Right. So the city has a finance committee which is made up of equal parts 7 members of the community and 7 members. They sit with 7 members of the city council. So we will have budget hearings once a year. The budget hearings usually they're going on or have gone on right now, but because of the impending vote, we've decided to hold the hearings off to see where we were at the end of the vote. But the finance committee or the budget committee has oversight over all of the expenditures, and they have equal votes as the city council at the end of the budget hearings. So they'll play a strong role in watchdogging the 95% and the 5%.
Thank you.
Lori Statement, Gresham City Council. Thank you, Mayor, for all your hard work. I really appreciate your leadership on this important levy. If people want to get involved, what types of events are upcoming and how can they get involved?
Thank you for that. So every Saturday morning, there's a local Italian restaurant that folks are meeting at 9 a.m. And there's a rally there every Saturday at 9 a.m. We have walking material. I think we've already, the first Saturday, I think we had over 50 people come out, 65 to come out and walk. And I got to tell you, these were, there's the usual suspects. Everybody knows the usual suspects, but there was a lot of folks I had never seen involved before. And I think that was emblematic of what we saw at the town halls too. We had a lot of folks that had lived in Gresham for a long time that came out to help, and I can't tell you how invigorating that is for the folks that have been working real hard on this campaign. But every Saturday at 9 a.m., I think we've got 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 pieces of door hangers that have already gone out because we've had so many people show up to canvass. So we're going door to door every Saturday. There's the website is on here, and I'll leave some of these here. Many of you have probably handed these out already, but keepgreshamsafe.org. is the website, and there's a Facebook presence as well, where you can email in, ask questions, that sort of thing, or get lots of factual information. So lots of opportunities to help. Of course, there's somebody in this room that collects checks. Joan Albertson, treasurer for the campaign. And so I would say that from the campaign's perspective, things are moving quite well. The funding has been pretty strong. The committee has 4 or 5 mailers that are scheduled to go out to the people that we know that are going to vote, the higher likelihood of voters that have voted in 4 of the last 6 elections. So you've probably seen the signs out and about, and things are moving along well.
Jim Schlocker, Superintendent Gresham Barlow. Shane, I appreciate you and the council. You've done an excellent job in running up to this campaign, and certainly personally couldn't be more supportive than I am in terms of what is needed here. With 14 of our 19 schools very dependent upon the city's fire, police, and parks, the question I would want to hear a little bit more about, just from that perspective, or the park side, are these dollars just to sustain what the fees are paying for, or is there any vision down the road for expansion of the park services in the community?
The parks question is one that not only has a direct effect, of course, with the kids, but it has a direct effect on prevention, right? I mean, so we know that in the summer when kids don't have things to do and there's no recreation program, that the odds are some kids are going to get into trouble. And so it's an important question. The 5% that goes to parks, there's 1 supervisor and 6 people left in our parks department compared to 19 folks not that long ago. Those 6 people are the people that are mowing the lawns. So they're maintenance folks. So it maintains that. The next question and the next conversation that has to happen in this community is part of what the RAD process is about, which is Rise, Advance, Dream. After we get through, stabilizing public safety, the next question is, what does this community want? I mean, what do they want to be? What do you want to invest in? Do you want a community center? Do you want a Parks and Rec program? I think there's ways to get at Parks and Rec, but I think it's going to take the schools, it's going to take the city, it's going to take the business community to all come together to provide a program. It's not going to be just the city, it's not going to be just the schools. In the absence of real direct funding, we're going to have to get really creative. And I know members of this chamber have contributed to rec programs, whether it's vehicles or dollars or whatever. So I think that's a conversation that we're all going to have to talk about. And it's pretty important, and it has long dividends, for future criminals that we're not locking up. But Boys and Girls Club, Friends of Children, some of the other organizations that have come in, Salvation Army, to try and partner with them is incredibly important. But there's kids that we're missing, and it's as you know, and it's tough.
So one other question that comes to mind, I had the pleasure of going out on a Saturday and hanging some paper, not in the traditional sense, of course, and had the opportunity also, of course, to talk with some people who were out and about and wanted to know what the devil I was doing. And I was approached a couple of times by people who said, well, that's all fine and good, but maintaining the status quo just maintains the status quo, and we're not doing very well. So with that in mind, I know that you touched on this a little bit, but what's Gresham going to do about not maintaining the status quo? And on the flip side of that, since this is intended to be a replacement and only status quo, how are we going to deal with increased costs as we go forward? PERS and salaries and wages and everything else are going to go forward. Are we just going to try to rely upon increased revenue because of increased property values, or is there some other plan?
Yeah. The maintaining, and if I go back to one of these slides here. So one of the things that that we have been forced to do is try and find other places to fund public safety. So for instance, the state funds the East Metro Gang Enforcement Team, which is tremendously effective. It goes cross-jurisdictional, so that group, like the criminals, know no boundaries. So they go from Portland, Fairview, Troutdale, Wood Village, Gresham. So in that funding comes from the state. We also have went after the federal government to fund the COPS program. So Gresham had the largest COPS funding from the federal government of any city in the state of Oregon. We did the same with the SAFER grants in the fire department. We went after grants. So we've tried to go and get after areas where there is money available to supplement what's going on here. That's not going to stop. We're going to need to continue to do that. With these priorities in here, we're going to be able to start, the chief assures us that we're going to be able to start to get at some, bless you, start to get at some of these issues better than we are right now. Now, for instance, he's going to have some things to announce in terms of homelessness and some of the transient problems that we've been dealing with as well. There's some things that are coming out, again, on ways to look at the problem differently. So we're not going to stop being creative. We're not going to stop looking for other resources, and we're not going to let up on the problem. We all know that the problem is not getting any easier, and it goes to what the superintendent said as well. I mean, we have to start thinking about, we funded for the first time a gang outreach person that is not in the police department. This is a gang specialist that is now in the Office of Governance and Management, who is working on putting together different strategies, different ways. The beautiful part about cities is that what we're going through, many other cities have gone through, and other cities have been successful at combating it. We will be too, but it takes different approaches, different priorities when it comes to budgeting, and it takes some resources.
What I wanted to know, Rosemary Griffin, by the way, why can't we do something like we're doing right now with putting money on like water or something so that everybody's paying for it, not just homeowners?
Well, everybody will pay for the levy as well. Okay, so in other words, if you live in an apartment, the apartment complex is going to be taxed the levy rate based on the value of the apartment, and that'll be divided up and sent out to each individual unit the same way. So apartment owners will pay as well. The process that we went through in terms of the fee, well, it wasn't simple. We had over 10 town halls on it, and which was, I got to tell you, which was absolutely one of probably the scariest thing that I ever set out to do, but it ended up being the best thing, because people came to city council chambers that lived in this community for 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 years, talking about the changes that they've seen and willing, and while nobody likes to pay more money, willing to make some investments because they see the need. When we went through that process, one of the things that the community said was, we really want to be able to vote on this. We'll go along with you for now. You can sunset this for 18 months, but we want to be able to vote on it. So it's a little bit odd to be up here after we already have the revenue, and then to come back and say, well, we need the revenue when we've already got it. It'd be easier to just take the moratorium off and put the fee through. But the fee isn't as stable as the levy. The levy will actually stabilize public safety for a longer period of time. It will grow with property values. It'll grow with assessed value, and we'll be able to get at some things that we can't necessarily get at on the fee. Also on the fee was collected in 18 months spent in 12 months. So in order for the fee to really get to the fiscal year of 12 months, it would need to be higher than it is now.
Thank you.
Minor levies with levies out. And what happens now if the measure doesn't pass? Where do you go from there? Are you going to put in another fee, or do you have an idea of what to do? Yeah,
I think Representative Matthews had the best response for this. He says, "I didn't get married while I was on Match.com." so I think you have to, we're all in on this. I mean, I think this is the best. Approach to stabilizing public safety, and I'm not thinking about failure at this point.
Dean Funk, PG. Your administration has done so much on both sides of the ledger to cut costs for businesses, to make it attractive to come to Gresham. And also, I know this very closely, that throughout the city of Gresham, your savings on energy are in a good way hurting our bottom line, but it's not such a bad thing. I wonder, and you're yourself active in business development, when you are dealing with companies that come to Gresham, Are they coming because the tax rates are low, or are they concerned because the tax rates are so low and services are so low? What's sort of the hit from people who come and look at the city?
From larger businesses, they look at the Portland metro region, so they don't even really drill down to Gresham until first they go through the process, decide if there's available land or if there's spec industrial space or what that is. Quite honestly, the tax rate doesn't ever really come in as a question, not that I've ever seen. I think where it starts to hurt businesses is in your small business community, because they're the ones that are going to feel the effect more quickly of a slower police presence, of less officers, of less, we're not doing a lot of proactive police work. That means you're not having officers walk down your main street and talk to business owners, or you're not having the officers in the neighborhood or that sort of thing. So I think it affects the smaller businesses more than it does the larger ones.
Scott Hansen. Thank you for doing this. This community needs it. As a lifelong member of this community, we do need a safe public place to live. I guess my one concern, and I do support this measure, but the thing that I would say bothers me, but I hate to see the dollars. We talk about public safety all the time, but the map, police gets the most of it, then fire. And the way our fire dollars are spent in this community and probably in the state is they spend most of their time going to medical emergency calls. Most of those medical emergency calls truly are medical emergencies. They're chronic problems. Everybody knows this, the fire department, so that, yeah, we have needs in our engines, but the vast majority of what the fire department does isn't really due to public safety or fire, it's due to medical problems. Is there any way that we can address that? It might not be a local thing, but a state thing, but to make so that we have local EMTs that show up as well as the fire department at every emergency call.
Yeah.
It seems like a duplication of services. Is there any way to limit that so that we can put more of those dollars into public safety and less of them into a service that's already provided by a private entity?
Right, it's a good question. It's one that comes up and that we talk about and wrestle with to find ways to innovate around that. And there are other service delivery, fire EMS service delivery organizations, even within the Portland region, that aren't running their trucks out. I mean, I think it does seem a bit ridiculous to run $1 million rig down to Courtyard Fountains 15 times a day, right? I mean, when you're not you're not fighting a fire. So there's other modes of transportation and ways to do it. I know that Chief Matthews is investigating some of those, and I think it's important to keep to look at them. The delivery model is changing. It's changing all the time. I think you run into some union issues as you try and change the service delivery program, as everybody that has done it has tried to, but it's worth doing. It makes sense.
Tom Griffith, I'm a volunteer with the City of Gresham. One of the things that while we're talking about nuts and bolts and the technical aspects, I'm curious about the perception of safety on the spring water and the Fairview trails. Currently, there's no markings on those trails, but there's been a request by the Public Safety Committee to look into the possibilities of marking the spring water trail, giving the consideration that if somebody gets into trouble on the spring water trail and they call 911, it's relatively difficult for them to identify where they are right now. I'm wondering if the projection would be that might come under the parks funding, or would that come under some form of public safety funding if it's necessary to wait until this bill passes?
Yeah. I don't think it's probably necessary to wait till the levy passes. I think we can make some signs this afternoon. I don't think it's that tough to do. We've got a sign shop, and I know it's not that. We've got signs and we've got some lettering. So I'd be interested to hear more about what the Public Safety Committee has recommended. Did they make a formal recommendation yet, or?
I don't want to. I'm going to hesitate to answer that, Shane, but I would love very much to visit with you further on this. It's been around for a while and it's kind of stagnated.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's worth talking about. As somebody that uses the trail pretty frequently, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Other questions?
Well, thank you again very much for the opportunity, and we'll be, if you have any questions or you continue to have any questions in between now and the time that ballots are due, please feel free to call me, email the committee. I want to say that this committee, Councilor Stegman, Councilor Eccles, Jesse Cornett is here from the committee as well, have all worked very hard and continue to work very hard to make sure that the information gets out and everybody can look at it, it's factual, and can make an educated decision. So thanks to the work that they've done, it's been very stellar. So thank you for the time, appreciate it.